A custodian thinks he can fix this? Isabella Vance's voice dripped with derision as she gestured toward the flickering thruster. Her sapphire bracelet caught the conference room lights as she dramatically fanned the air near her nose. God, you even smell like hydraulic fluid. Marcus Jones froze in the entryway, recycling bins still gripped in his calloused hands. 20 executives stared at him like he was an unwelcome pest. Isabella stood up, her black Prada heels clicking against the terrazzo floors. She walked to Marcus, close enough that he could smell her expensive perfume, mixed with disdain. Here's a deal, maintenance boy. Fix this $5 million thruster that Caltech engineers couldn't repair, and I'll give you my corner office right here. She snapped her fingers inches from his face. When you fail, and you will, security will escort you out permanently. The room fell silent. $500 million in launch contracts hung on this broken machine. Have you ever been dismissed so completely that someone bet their reputation you'd fail? Astra Launch Systems rose from Houston's urban sprawl like a steel monument to ambition. The 60-story tower housed America's most promising aerospace company, where multi-billion-dollar dreams took shape in clean rooms and conference rooms that smelled of recycled air and power. Isabella Vance had built this empire with relentless ambition. At 42, she commanded respect through intimidation, her dark hair always coiled into a severe chignon, her pantsuits tailored to project authority. The space industry called her a pioneer. Her employees whispered different words behind secured doors. The company's crown jewel sat broken on the executive briefing table. A revolutionary plasma containment thruster designed to power their constellation of orbital satellites. This wasn't just any thruster. It represented 5 years of development, 62 patents, and the engineering dreams of Houston's brightest minds. The machine could theoretically position satellites with 98% fuel efficiency, revolutionizing the communications industry overnight. For 8 weeks, this machine had defied every attempt at repair. 4 separate teams of Ivy League engineers had failed. 81 diagnostic tests had yielded nothing but frustration and mounting pressure. The thruster would power on, run for exactly 9 minutes and 12 seconds, then destabilize and shut down with the same cryptic error code. Plasma resonance instability detected. Marcus Jones knew every inch of Astra Launch's terrazzo floors. For 5 years, he'd pushed his utility cart through these corridors, invisible to the executives who navigated around him like a fixed obstacle. His official title read Logistics Associate, but everyone knew the truth. He emptied recycling bins, buffed floors, and endured the daily indignity of being the most educated custodian in the Texas space sector. His aerospace engineering technology degree from a state college hung framed in his small apartment, a stark reminder of dreams grounded by family obligations and circumstances beyond his control. While his classmates had accepted offers from NASA, Marcus had chosen sacrifice. His father's Alzheimer's care came first, always. The memory care facility cost $8,000 a month. His father's pension covered half. The math was simple and crushing. The thruster crisis deepened each day. Isabella's morning briefings grew more tense, her expectations more impossible. She prowled the conference room like a caged panther, her heels clicking against terrazzo in sharp, anxious rhythms that made junior engineers jump. Coffee mugs accumulated on briefing tables like geological strata, marking the progression of her desperation. $85 million, she yelled at the engineering team during Wednesday's emergency meeting. That's what we lose in penalties if this thruster isn't operational by Monday. $85 million that could have secured our launch dominance for the next decade. The engineers, Caltech, MIT, Georgia Tech graduates, sat frozen in expensive business attire, their tablets displaying the same error codes they'd been staring at for weeks. Their average salary exceeded $150,000 annually. Their combined student debt totaled over $3 million. None of that mattered now. The thruster's AI control system refused to stabilize the plasma field within the magnetic containment. Every time they thought they'd found the solution, the machine would destabilize, arc, and shut down. Team leader Kevin Cho, Caltech class of 2021, had dark circles under his eyes that no amount of caffeine could erase. His team had tried everything: software patches, component swaps, complete system reboots. They'd consulted with propulsion specialists from NASA, AI experts from Austin, even brought in a spiritual energy healer after someone suggested the building's aura might be interfering with the magnetic fields. Isabella's eyes swept the room like targeting lasers, hunting for someone to blame. "Maybe we have too many people who don't belong here," she said, her gaze lingering on Marcus as he quietly refilled the water carafe. "Excess weight that's dragging down our entire mission." The comment hit its target. Several engineering team members glanced at Marcus, their expressions ranging from pity to thinly veiled agreement. Dr. Anya Sharma from Georgia Tech shifted uncomfortably. She'd worked 14-hour days for 8 weeks and couldn't solve the problem. Yet somehow, the suggestion that a custodian might be the weak link made a twisted sort of sense in their exhausted minds. Marcus pretended not to hear. He'd learned that invisibility was survival in this environment, but his engineering mind couldn't stop analyzing the problem. Late at night, when he polished the conference room floors, he'd study the thruster's schematics left scattered on the table. The technical specifications told a story that the engineers seemed to miss. The thruster's magnetic coils were wound in France using metric standards, but the AI control software was developed in Texas using standard units. A tiny conversion discrepancy could create cascading failures. The pressure mounted like cryogenic fuel in a sealed tank. Security footage from the previous week showed Isabella deliberately scheduling Marcus's cleaning duties during important investor calls. She'd point him out to potential partners, her voice carrying just loud enough for him to hear. "We believe in providing opportunities for everyone, even our support staff." Her tone suggested charity rather than employment. Email chains revealed worse. Internal communications referred to him as the cart guy, despite his official associate title. Messages discussed his inevitable layoff as a budget trimming measure. One particularly cruel thread, initiated by Isabella herself, speculated about whether he could even read the company's mission statement. HR manager David Chen had participated, adding laughing emojis to comments about Marcus's limited skill set. The whispered conversations were equally brutal. Employees discussed his presence like an unfortunate requirement, a corporate diversity initiative that management fulfilled but didn't champion. "At least he's quiet," one project manager had said. "Better than the last guy who actually tried to talk about propulsion systems." The French investors arrived on Thursday, their black Teslas pulling up to Astra Launch's entrance like a diplomatic envoy. These men represented 200 million euros in potential funding, money that could propel the company into a global monopoly. Jean-Luc Moreau, CEO of Arianespace, had flown from Paris specifically to evaluate Astra Launch's thruster technology. His reputation for technical exactitude was legendary. Companies either met his standards flawlessly or failed into obscurity. Dr. Evelyn Reed, former NASA propulsion chief and current board advisor, accompanied the delegation. Her reputation in aerospace engineering was iconic. She designed ion drives that had powered missions to Mars, held 45 patents, and consulted for agencies across 3 continents. Her presence meant this wasn't just a business meeting, it was a technical audit that could make or break Astra Launch's future. Dr. Reed didn't tolerate incompetence, didn't accept excuses, and could identify engineering flaws with a physicist's precision. The demonstration was scheduled for Friday morning. The entire company held its breath. Marketing had already drafted press releases announcing the successful joint venture. Sales teams had prepared proposals for European satellite deployments. The executive lounge had ordered champagne for a celebration that everyone prayed would happen. Isabella's desperation showed in small ways. Her usually immaculate makeup appeared slightly worn by Thursday evening. Her assistants scurried through corridors carrying endless cups of espresso and anti-anxiety supplements. The executive washroom had become her private sanctuary, where she unleashed frustration that couldn't be displayed in public. Security guards reported hearing muffled yelling and the sound of expensive heels kicking aluminum trash cans. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his invisible existence. He watched engineers work 18-hour shifts, consuming energy shots and proposing increasingly bizarre theories about the thruster's problems. They blamed software glitches, hardware defects, even solar flare interference with the building's power grid. One desperate engineer suggested that the office's air conditioning vibrations might be disrupting the thruster's magnetic containment field. But Marcus heard something they didn't. During his late-night cleaning rounds, when the building fell silent, he'd pause near the clean room. The machine made sounds, subtle hums, frequency shifts, and resonance patterns that reminded him of his grandfather's hangar in San Antonio. Every engine has its own signature, Elijah Jones had taught him. You just have to learn its frequency. This thruster's signature sounded stressed, like it was vibrating against its own design. Friday morning brought catastrophe. The final diagnostic test had failed spectacularly, filling the conference room with ozone and triggering the halon fire suppression system. Engineers stood in a chemical haze, their expensive tablets fried, their careers hanging by threads thinner than carbon fiber. The smell of burnt electronics mixed with inert gas created an atmosphere of utter defeat that permeated the entire floor. Jean-Luc Moreau watched the disaster unfold with Gallic stoicism, his expression revealing nothing. Dr. Reed took detailed notes, her pen moving in sharp, efficient strokes. The other French investors exchanged glances that suggested their private jet might be departing sooner than scheduled. Isabella convened an emergency all-hands meeting. 300 employees packed into the main auditorium, their faces reflecting various stages of dread and despair. The French investors sat in the front row, their expressions unreadable behind designer eyewear. Marcus stood in the back near the service exits, invisible as always. "Ladies and gentlemen," Isabella began, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "We face our greatest challenge. Our revolutionary thruster, the core of our satellite deployment system, remains non-operational. Our engineering teams have exhausted conventional methods." She paused, letting the weight of failure settle on the room like a shroud. "Effective immediately, we will begin strategic resource reallocation. Non-essential personnel will be furloughed, starting with positions that don't directly contribute to solving this crisis." The room fell silent, except for the hum of air conditioning and quiet sniffles from the back rows. Isabella's gaze swept across faces, hunting for a sacrifice to offer the corporate gods. Her eyes lingered on Marcus with predatory focus. That's when Marcus made his move. He raised his hand. "Ma'am," his voice carried clearly through the microphone-enhanced acoustics. "I think the problem might be in the magnetic coil resonance, not the plasma injection software." 300 heads turned toward him like a field of sunflowers tracking a new sun. The French investors leaned forward with sudden interest. Dr. Reed raised an eyebrow, her expression shifting from disappointment to intrigue. Isabella's face transformed. Surprise gave way to fury, then to something far more dangerous: opportunity. But what Isabella didn't know about Marcus would change everything. The real story was just beginning. San Antonio, 2005. The aerospace industry was contracting, but Elijah Jones's hangar at Stinson Municipal Airport still buzzed with activity. At 75, He moved with the practiced economy of a master mechanic, his weathered hands diagnosing jet engines like they were living things. 14-year-old Marcus pressed his face against the hangar's corrugated metal wall, watching his grandfather perform magic on a damaged F-16 engine. The turbine had been written off by 3 other mechanics, but Elijah saw something they missed. His fingers traced the engine casing with the gentleness of a surgeon examining a patient. "Come here, boy," Elijah called without looking up. "Time you learned something real." That summer changed everything. While other kids played on their consoles, Marcus spent his days in the Cathedral of Titanium and Kerosene that was his grandfather's world. Elijah had been one of the first black crew chiefs at Kelly Air Force Base, breaking barriers in the 1980s when such achievements demanded unparalleled skill and fortitude. "Listen close," Elijah would say, placing Marcus's small hand on a running turbine. "This machine's got a frequency. Feel that vibration? That's 10,000 blades talking to each other. Millions of controlled explosions per minute, all working in perfect resonance." The old man's philosophy was simple but profound. "Son, an engine doesn't care about your degree or your skin color. It only responds to those who truly understand its frequency. Respect the machine, learn its language, and it'll never deceive you." Elijah taught Marcus to diagnose problems through sound, vibration, even smell. A slight shift in turbine whine could indicate a worn bearing. A particular scent might reveal a hydraulic fluid leak or fuel contamination. These weren't skills taught in textbooks. They were inherited wisdom, passed down through generations of men who understood that machines had souls. The lessons extended beyond mechanics. Elijah had survived decades in an industry that didn't always welcome men who looked like him. He'd earned respect through irrefutable competence, fixing problems that stumped engineers with advanced degrees. His reputation in the Air Force was legendary. Elijah Jones could resurrect any engine, no matter how hopeless it seemed. "Folks are going to test you twice as hard," he told Marcus during those long summer afternoons. "Going to assume you're half as capable. But engines don't deceive, boy. When you fix something they couldn't, suddenly your color doesn't matter so much." By age 18, Marcus could tear down and rebuild entire jet engines blindfolded. He understood the intricate symphony of compressors, turbines, and afterburners better than most aerospace engineers. State college professors were astonished by his intuitive grasp of propulsion principles that typically required years of study to comprehend. But life had other plans. Elijah died during Marcus's senior year of high school, a sudden stroke while working under the wing of a Learjet. The funeral overflowed with Air Force pilots, mechanics, and private clients whose planes Elijah had kept flying. They spoke of his genius, his integrity, his ability to devise impossible solutions with simple tools. The hangar closed forever. The tools were sold to pay off debts. Marcus's inheritance wasn't money. It was knowledge, instinct, and a philosophy that would sustain him through decades of being underestimated. When Marcus's father, Robert, was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's during his sophomore year of college, the choice was clear. Transferring to a 4-year university meant student loans, living out of town, and time away from home. His father needed him more than he needed a prestigious degree. He worked 3 jobs while completing his associate's degree in aerospace engineering technology. Nights at a shipping warehouse, weekends at an aviation supply store, early mornings cleaning commercial buildings. His grades remained perfect despite an exhaustion that left him dozing in the library between classes. The community college professors recognized his rare talent. Dr. Sanchez, who taught at Caltech before settling into a quieter academic life, pulled Marcus aside after a particularly brilliant presentation on plasma dynamics. "You have a gift," she said simply. "I've seen PhD candidates with less intuitive understanding of propulsion systems. Don't let circumstances extinguish that fire." But circumstances were relentless. The memory care facility consumed every spare dollar. Insurance covered a fraction of the costs, leaving thousands in monthly expenses. Marcus's part-time jobs became a full-time necessity. His transfer applications to 4-year universities remained unsubmitted in a folder labeled Someday. After graduation, he found work wherever he could use his skills: small aircraft repair shops, industrial maintenance, eventually landing at Astralaunch through a temporary agency that promised logistics associate opportunities. The reality was different, but the paycheck covered his father's care. 5 years later, he still carried his grandfather's philosophy like a sacred trust. Every night, he studied aerospace journals and technical manuals, keeping his knowledge sharp despite his custodial duties. Online courses in propulsion systems, AI control theory, and advanced diagnostics filled his free hours. His small apartment was crammed with textbooks, technical journals, and salvaged engine components he studied like historical artifacts. Elijah's voice echoed in his mind during the darkest moments. "The engine doesn't care about your circumstances, boy. It just wants someone who understands its language." Standing in Astralaunch's auditorium, facing 300 skeptical faces and Isabella's predatory smile, Marcus felt his grandfather's presence like a steady hand on his shoulder. The broken thruster wasn't different from that F-16 engine in 2005. It just needed someone who could hear its true frequency. The real test was about to begin. The auditorium fell into a silence so absolute that the building's air handlers sounded like a rushing storm. Isabella Vance stood frozen at the podium, her manicured fingers gripping the lectern until her knuckles turned white. She hadn't anticipated this. A custodian challenging her in front of investors who could make or break her company's future. Jean-Luc Moreau leaned forward in his front row seat, his sharp blue eyes fixed on Marcus with the intensity of a hawk spotting its quarry. Beside him, Dr. Evelyn Reed set down her water glass with deliberate care, her legendary engineering instincts suddenly on high alert. The other French investors whispered in rapid, sibilant consonants that cut through the tension like breaking glass. Isabella's mind raced through options. She could shut Marcus down, reassert her authority, and proceed with the furlough announcement. But something in Jean-Luc Moreau's expression stopped her. The French industrialist was studying Marcus with the same focus he'd reserved for a promising new rocket design. This wasn't the time for a quick dismissal. A cruel smile spread across Isabella's lips as a better idea formed. Why simply fire him when she could annihilate him publicly? Make an example that would cow every employee into total submission while entertaining her French guests with American corporate spectacle. "Well, well," she said, her voice amplified through the auditorium's sound system. "Our logistics associate has an opinion about advanced propulsion." The word logistics dripped with a venom that made several employees flinch. She stepped away from the podium, her black Prada heels clicking against the stage's polished concrete. "Marcus Jones, isn't it? The man who empties our recycling bins and buffs our floors thinks he understands what 81 Caltech and MIT graduates couldn't solve." Nervous laughter rippled through the audience. Employees shifted uncomfortably in their seats, caught between morbid curiosity and professional horror. This was corporate blood sport, and everyone was a spectator. Dr. Reed pulled out her leather-bound notebook, uncapping an expensive fountain pen. In her 50 years of aerospace engineering, she'd seen countless moments when breakthroughs came from the most unexpected places. Her mentor at NASA had taught her never to dismiss an insight based on its source. "Genius," he'd said, "wears many disguises." "Since you're so confident," Isabella continued, her voice rising with theatrical drama, "here's your chance to prove it. Fix our $5 million thruster that stumped our best engineers for 8 weeks. Do it in front of everyone, our board, our investors, our entire company." She gestured toward the French delegation, like a ringmaster presenting the main act. These gentlemen represent $200 million in potential funding. They came to see American innovation at its finest. Let's give them a show they'll never forget." Jean-Luc Moreau's expression remained unreadable, but his assistant was already typing notes on a tablet. Whatever happened next would be documented, analyzed, and reported back to Paris. American corporate culture was, apparently, more entertaining than the brochures suggested. Isabella's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper that the microphone caught and amplified. "Here are the stakes, Marcus. You have exactly 2 hours to diagnose and repair what our Caltech-trained engineers couldn't fix in 8 weeks. If you succeed, which we both know you won't, I'll personally promote you to lead propulsion systems analyst with a salary that matches your overinflated confidence." The auditorium buzzed with shocked murmurs. Lead analyst positions paid high 6 figures and came with significant stock options. It was a ludicrous offer for someone whose current job involved managing waste disposal. "But when you fail," Isabella continued, her smile sharp enough to cut glass, "you're not just fired, you're banned from this facility for life. Security will escort you out, and I'll personally ensure that every aerospace company in Texas knows about your spectacular flameout." She snapped her fingers, and 2 security guards materialized at the auditorium's side doors like summoned sentinels. Their presence was not subtle. This was intimidation theater, designed to terrify anyone else who might consider speaking out of turn. Dr. Reed stood up suddenly, her movement commanding the room's full attention. At 68, Evelyn Reed commanded a respect that transcended corporate titles. Her work on the Mars rover's landing systems was legendary. Her consulting firm counted every major aerospace contractor as clients. When she spoke, engineers took notes. "I'll serve as technical adjudicator," she announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had never been wrong about propulsion. "This test requires impartial oversight to ensure fairness and technical accuracy." Isabella's smile flickered. She hadn't anticipated this. Dr. Reed's involvement legitimized the challenge, transforming it from corporate bullying into a formal technical review. Jean-Luc Moreau nodded approvingly. "Excellent. Monsieur Jones, you have our undivided attention." His English was precise, carrying the weight of industrial authority that had built the European space program. "We are most curious to see American problem-solving in action." The auditorium erupted in whispered conversations. Employees pulled out smartphones, already composing messages and social media posts about the unfolding drama. This was the kind of corporate spectacle that would be discussed in Houston bars for years. Isabella realized she'd lost control of the spectacle's narrative, but it was too late to back down. "Fine," she said, her voice tight with barely concealed rage. "Dr. Reed can witness your inevitable failure, but I'm adding one more condition." She gestured toward the cameras that Astra Launch used for press briefings and company-wide announcements. "We're live-streaming this entire challenge on our company social media channels. Let the world see what happens when unqualified people attempt jobs far beyond their abilities." The live-stream suggestion sparked immediate activity. Communications assistants scrambled to set up professional lighting and camera feeds. Social media managers began drafting hashtags. Cirque Astra Challenge, Trotter Propulsion Test, Innovation or Ignition. Within minutes, the company's Instagram and LinkedIn pages would be broadcasting live footage to tens of thousands of followers. Marcus stood motionless throughout this corporate circus, his utility cart still beside him like a loyal squire. His calloused hands remained steady despite the seismic shift of attention focused on his every move. This was the moment Elijah Jones had prepared him for, not through specific training, but through a lifetime of understanding that engines responded to competence, regardless of credentials. Dr. Reed walked down the auditorium aisle, her sensible shoes making confident sounds against the polished concrete. She stopped directly in front of Marcus, studying his face with the intensity of someone who'd spent decades sizing up technical talent. "Young man," she said quietly. Her voice meant only for him. "Are you absolutely certain you want to do this? This isn't just about fixing a thruster. Your entire future is on the line." Marcus met her gaze without flinching. "Ma'am, I've been listening to engines my whole life. This one's been trying to tell us what's wrong. We just haven't been listening on the right frequency." Dr. Reed nodded slowly. Something in his eyes reminded her of the young engineers she'd mentored at JPL, that blend of knowledge, intuition, and quiet resolve that separated true talent from mere credentials. "Very well," she said, loud enough for the microphones to capture. "Let's see what you can do." The challenge was officially set. 2 hours to prove or destroy a lifetime of hidden expertise. The thruster waited in the conference room like a mechanical arbiter. Its silent testimony was about to determine one man's destiny. The crowd began moving toward the executive floor, smartphones held aloft to record every step of this unprecedented corporate showdown. The executive conference room transformed into an arena of judgment. 300 employees pressed against the glass walls, their faces a mixture of morbid curiosity and nervous hope. The French investors arranged themselves in executive leather chairs, like a tribunal, Jean-Luc Moreau checking his Patek Philippe watch with Parisian precision. Dr. Reed positioned herself beside the thruster with the authority of someone who had witnessed countless moments of engineering revelation. The broken thruster dominated the conference table like a high-tech altar. Titanium and composite components caught the LED lighting, creating shadows that seemed to pulse with untapped power. Diagnostic equipment surrounded the machine. Tablets displaying endless error logs, oscilloscopes tracing magnetic field fluctuations, thermal sensors monitoring heat patterns that had baffled engineers for 8 weeks. Isabella Vance stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, her silhouette framed against the Houston skyline. Her smartphone live-streamed the scene to Astra Launch's social media channels, the viewer count climbing exponentially as word spread through the aerospace community. The comment section filled with predictions, mostly forecasting a spectacular failure. Marcus approached the thruster slowly, his maintenance uniform a stark contrast to the expensive suits surrounding him. The crowd's whispers died as he placed both hands flat against the thruster's housing, closing his eyes with the reverence of a musician tuning a priceless Stradivarius. The first 30 seconds stretched into an eternity. Employees exchanged skeptical glances. A few members of the engineering team smirked, already mentally composing their resumes in case the company imploded from this public relations catastrophe. But Dr. Reed watched with mounting interest as Marcus's expression shifted from deep concentration to dawning recognition. "It's fighting itself," Marcus said suddenly, his voice carrying clearly through the room's acoustics. "The AI control system is flawless, but it's trying to correct for a mechanical vibration that shouldn't exist." He opened his eyes, looking directly at Jean-Luc Moreau. "Sir, this thruster's magnetic coils were wound in France using metric specifications." "Correct. But the AI control system was programmed here in Houston." Jean-Luc Moreau's eyebrows rose a fraction. "This is also correct. Our precision is to the 100th of a millimeter. American programming typically uses standard imperial units." Isabella's confident expression flickered. She hadn't expected a technical dialogue that revealed actual knowledge of the supply chain. Marcus nodded, his hands still resting on the thruster. "That's the first problem. The AI is trying to control magnetic fields that are 0.0 or 4 inches different from what it expects. It's like trying to conduct an orchestra when every instrument is tuned to a slightly different pitch." First discovery. The sound diagnosis. "May I power it on?" Marcus asked Dr. Reed, who nodded with intense curiosity. The machine hummed to life, filling the room with the low thrum of contained energy. But where others heard a normal system hum, Marcus heard a conversation. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. Engines speak to those who know their language. "Listen," he said, raising his voice over the electronic symphony. "At 3,200 Hz, there's a resonance frequency mismatch. The magnetic coils are hitting their optimal vibration, but the AI sensors are reading harmonics that don't match the programmed parameters." He pointed to a diagnostic screen displaying incomprehensible data plots. "Your engineers have been chasing software phantoms when the problem is mechanical resonance. The thruster runs for exactly 9 minutes and 12 seconds before destabilizing, because that's when the resonance mismatch reaches critical amplification." Dr. Reed stepped forward, her engineering mind fully engaged. "Explain your resonance theory." "Every machine has a natural frequency, the operational sweet spot where all components vibrate in perfect synchronization. This thruster was designed to operate at 3,600 Hz for optimal plasma containment. But the AI system was calibrated to expect imperial-based measurements. So it's trying to maintain a different resonant frequency than what the mechanical components can sustain." He gestured toward an oscilloscope displaying wave patterns. "See those irregular spikes at 9-minute intervals? That's the thruster trying to find its natural harmony while the AI forces it into an artificial one." Kevin Cho, the Caltech-trained team leader, pushed through the crowd. "That's impossible. We tested resonant frequencies extensively during R&D." Marcus looked at him with respectful disagreement. "You tested the frequencies that the AI was programmed to expect, but the actual mechanical components are humming a slightly different tune." Jean-Luc Moreau exchanged glances with his associates. This was not the rambling of an unqualified maintenance worker. This was sophisticated acoustic engineering analysis that addressed fundamental design integration failures. Second discovery: the measurement revelation. Marcus moved to the thruster's technical documents, spreading blueprints across the polished conference table. His finger traced specifications with the precision of someone who had studied these pages during countless late-night cleaning shifts. The containment coil was wound in Paris to a 92.45 mm diameter, he said, pointing to French engineering notes. But the AI calibration assumes 3.640 inches, which converts to 92.456 mm. Mathematically negligible, but mechanically significant. Dr. Reed leaned over the blueprints, her fountain pen following his calculations. "Continue. Manufacturing tolerance in France allows plus or minus 0.002 mm. American tolerance typically allows plus or minus 0.005 inches, which is roughly 0.127 mm. The French components are manufactured to far tighter tolerances than the AI system is programmed for." He pulled out a digital caliper from the diagnostic kit, measuring various components with practiced skill. The injectors, the emitters, even the magnetic shielding, everything is manufactured to European precision standards, but the AI assumes American tolerance ranges. This creates a cascading synchronization error. Marcus continued, his confidence building as the technical logic became undeniable. "The AI constantly makes micro-corrections, trying to compensate for imprecisions that aren't actually there. It's like a conductor trying to correct musicians who are already playing in perfect tune." Isabella's livestream comments exploded with engineering debate. Viewers were sharing the stream across professional networks. Several NASA and SpaceX engineers joined the conversation with technical questions and grudging respect. Kevin Cho studied the measurements, his expression shifting from disbelief to awe. "The tolerance differential creates cumulative timing errors," he muttered, his Caltech education finally catching up to Marcus's intuitive analysis. Jean-Luc Moreau stood up, examining the measurements himself. French engineering pride demanded verification of any claims about manufacturing precision. After several minutes of careful calculation, he nodded slowly. "The analysis is mathematically sound." Third discovery: the elegant solution. "So, how do we fix it?" Dr. Reed asked, her notebook now filled with technical diagrams. Instead of proposing expensive software rewrites or hardware replacements, Marcus walked to a storage cabinet containing spare parts. He selected what appeared to be a simple metallic ring, roughly the size of a coaster, with carefully milled grooves. "A resonance dampener," he explained, holding the component up for all to see. Instead of reprogramming the AI to match French tolerances or remanufacturing components to American specifications, we add this buffer to bridge the frequency gap. Isabella's confident expression had cracked completely. "You're suggesting a $75 part can solve a problem that's cost us 8 weeks and millions in consulting fees?" "Sometimes the most elegant engineering solutions are the simplest," Marcus replied. "The AI and the thruster are both perfect. They just need a translator to help them communicate in the same language." He began installing the dampener with movements that spoke of years of hands-on experience. His hands worked with the confident precision of someone who had rebuilt countless engines in San Antonio hangars, college workshops, and late-night apartment complex maintenance calls. Dr. Reed watched his every move with professional admiration. "Where did you learn resonant frequency engineering?" "My grandfather taught me that engines have souls," Marcus said, tightening the final bolt. "You can't fix a soul with a software patch. You have to listen to what it's trying to tell you, then help it find its natural harmony." The installation took 15 minutes. The dampener fit perfectly onto existing mounting points, requiring no modification to the original design. It was engineering elegance in its purest form, solving a complex problem through a simple, intuitive solution. "Ready for testing," Marcus announced, stepping back from the thruster. The conference room fell silent. Jean-Luc Moreau checked his watch again. 1 hour and 52 minutes had elapsed. If Marcus's analysis was correct, the thruster should now operate flawlessly. If he was wrong, his career and reputation would be vaporized in the most public way imaginable. Dr. Reed positioned herself at the diagnostic console, her experienced eyes ready to interpret every data stream and measurement. The French investors leaned forward with a collective sense of anticipation. Isabella's smartphone captured every moment for the tens of thousands of online viewers who had become invested in this unlikely engineering showdown. "Power on the thruster," Dr. Reed commanded. The moment of truth had arrived. 81 previous attempts had failed. Could a maintenance worker with a state college degree succeed where Caltech graduates had not? The thruster held its mechanical breath, ready to reveal its secrets to the one person who had truly learned to listen to its voice. The activation key turned, and destiny engaged with the sound of perfectly synchronized machinery, finding its natural harmony for the first time in 8 weeks. The activation key turned with a soft electronic chime that resonated through the silent conference room like a proclamation. 300 people held their breath as the thruster awakened, its initial hum filling the space with a low-frequency thrum that seemed to vibrate in their very bones. But something was different. Immediately, unmistakably different. The harsh, erratic buzzing that had plagued the thruster for 8 weeks was gone. In its place, a smooth, stable tone emerged. The sound of a magnetic field containing plasma in perfect equilibrium, each particle contributing to a harmony that made Dr. Reed's eyes widen with professional awe. This was what theoretical propulsion perfection sounded like. Marcus stood beside the thruster, his hand resting lightly on the vibrating housing. Where once he'd felt the desperate strain of systems working against each other, now he sensed the calm equilibrium of a machine operating in its natural state. The resonance dampener had worked exactly as his grandfather's wisdom had foretold. The diagnostic screens lit up with green indicators for the first time in 56 days. Thermal readings stabilized in optimal ranges. Field integrity sensors registered perfect containment across all vectors. The AI system's error messages vanished, replaced by steady streams of operational data that made the engineering team gasp in collective disbelief. Mon Dieu, Jean-Luc Moreau whispered, his French composure finally cracking as he stared at readings that his own Paris-based engineers had only dreamed of achieving. The thruster was operating at 99.2% efficiency, a full percentage point higher than its maximum theoretical performance. Dr. Reed moved between diagnostic stations like a conductor leading an orchestra, her trained eyes absorbing data that told a miraculous story. Plasma temperature is steady at optimal. Magnetic field integrity is holding at 100%. Resonant frequency locked at 3,600 Hz with zero fluctuation. She looked up at Marcus with something approaching reverence. In 50 years of aerospace engineering, I have never seen diagnostic readings this perfect. Your grandfather would be proud. The real test came when Isabella, her face ashen with dawning realization, demanded the full operational simulation. Fine, it's running, but can it actually power our satellite systems under real-world conditions? Through the conference room's floor-to-ceiling windows, employees could see Astra Launch's prototype satellite mounted on a test rig in the courtyard below. The satellite had sat inert for weeks, its advanced communication systems useless without a functioning power source. Marcus nodded toward the satellite with quiet confidence. Let's see what she can do. The thruster's power flowed through control systems, plasma conduits, and computerized networks with the smoothness of a river finding the sea. Dashboard lights illuminated in sequence as the satellite's electronic brain came online for the first time in 8 weeks. GPS systems locked, thruster nozzles gimbaled, antenna arrays unfurled with mechanical precision. The crowd pressed against the windows as the satellite's running lights brightened, its systems drawing power from the perfectly harmonized thruster. Slowly, almost majestically, the test rig began to simulate orbital maneuvers. It executed a flawless station-keeping burn, simulated a de-orbit maneuver, and performed a complex orbital inclination change that drew spontaneous applause from the watching employees. For 42 minutes, the thruster ran without a single anomaly. The dreaded 9-minute shutdown point passed without a whisper. 30 minutes beyond that, the systems continued to operate with French engineering precision, powered by American innovation and guided by San Antonio mechanical wisdom. Jean-Luc Moreau's assistant was typing furiously on her tablet, documenting performance metrics that exceeded every specification in their original investment prospectus. The other French investors were huddled in a rapid, excited conversation, their expressions shifting from skepticism to wonder to barely contained enthusiasm about partnership opportunities. Isabella's livestream had attracted over 150,000 viewers. The comments section was scrolling too fast to read individual messages. Aerospace professionals, engineering students, and random internet spectators were witnessing something historic. A maintenance worker solving a problem that had stumped teams of credentialed experts. "Shut it down," Dr. Reed finally commanded. "We've seen enough." The thruster settled into silence with the satisfied hum of a machine that had finally found its voice. The diagnostic screens maintained their green glow for several seconds before fading to standby. The test satellite returned to its resting position and powered down its systems with electronic grace. The conference room remained silent for long moments as the magnitude of what had just happened settled into the collective consciousness. 8 weeks of failure had been resolved in under 2 hours by someone whose official job description included buffing floors. Dr. Reed walked to Marcus, extending her hand with formal respect. "That was extraordinary engineering instinct. Where others saw software errors, you heard mechanical physics. Your solution was elegant, cost-effective, and absolutely brilliant." Jean-Luc Moreau approached next, his handshake firm with Gallic approval. Monsieur Jones, your diagnostic methodology has impressed our entire delegation. This is the kind of innovative thinking that builds global partnerships. Isabella stood frozen near the windows, her smartphone still recording a live stream that had become her own professional eulogy. The comments were no longer about Marcus's inevitable failure. They were celebrating his triumph and dissecting her disastrous leadership. The moment of truth had passed. What came next would determine whether merit was possible in corporate America, and whether talent could triumph over prejudice when the stakes were measured in millions of dollars and hundreds of careers. But first, the world needed to see what happened when the underestimated finally got their chance to prove what they had always known about themselves. Dr. Reed's voice cut through the conference room's silence with the authority of someone who had briefed presidents on space missions. Based on this demonstration, I am making an immediate recommendation to the board. She turned to face Jean-Luc Moreau and the French investors. Her words carried the weight of 5 decades in aerospace engineering. Marcus Jones has demonstrated exceptional diagnostic skills and innovative problem-solving that exceeds anything I have witnessed from traditional engineering teams. His analysis was physically sound, his solution was elegant, and his execution was flawless. Jean-Luc Moreau nodded with Parisian precision. Our delegation concurs entirely. Monsieur Jones's methodology impressed our whole technical evaluation team. He paused, checking notes on his assistant's tablet. We are prepared to increase our investment commitment by 25%, specifically contingent on Mr. Jones leading our European thruster integration program. The conference room erupted in whispers. A 25% increase meant an additional 50 million euros, funds that could transform Astra Launch from a promising contender into a global aerospace superpower. Furthermore, Dr. Reed continued, her fountain pen poised over official-looking documents, I am bypassing normal promotion protocols to offer him immediate advancement to lead propulsion diagnostics engineer, effective immediately. The salary adjustment will reflect market value for someone with demonstrated expertise in advanced resonance engineering. Isabella's live stream comments exploded with jubilation. Viewers were sharing the stream across professional networks, and several competing aerospace firms were already reaching out via social media with recruitment offers. The hashtag #ChubbarasMarcusJones began trending as propulsion engineers worldwide discussed the technical brilliance they had just witnessed. Kevin Cho stepped forward from the Caltech-trained engineering team, his expression a mixture of humility and professional awe. Our entire team formally apologizes for overlooking your insights. We request to collaborate on future projects, and we would be honored to learn from your diagnostic methods. The transformation was complete. In less than 2 hours, Marcus had evolved from an invisible custodian to a respected lead engineer, from an overlooked associate to a sought-after technical leader. The French partnership was secured. The thruster crisis was resolved. And Astra Launch's future was brighter than anyone could have imagined. But the most satisfying moment was yet to come. Isabella Vance still stood frozen by the windows, her smartphone capturing her own professional implosion for thousands of viewers who were about to witness what happens when arrogance meets accountability in corporate America. The conference room's atmosphere shifted like a weather front moving across the Gulf Coast. What had begun as Isabella's theater of public humiliation was now her professional tribunal. The French investors exchanged meaningful glances, their expressions revealing calculations that went far beyond technical specifications. Jean-Luc Moreau's assistant whispered urgent updates about the social media fallout. The live stream had reached over 250,000 viewers, with industry leaders from SpaceX to Blue Origin sharing the video across LinkedIn and Twitter. Comments ranged from celebration of Marcus's triumph to scathing criticism of Isabella's management style. Astrodrama was trending alongside Chibach engineering justice. Doctor. Reed closed her leather notebook with deliberate finality, her fountain pen clicking with the sound of a verdict being rendered. The board will require a full review of management practices that allowed this situation to occur. Specifically, how qualified personnel were systematically ignored, while expensive engineering teams failed to achieve fundamental operational goals. Isabella's face had drained of color, her confident corporate persona cracking under the weight of very public consequences. She had orchestrated this challenge expecting an easy victory, never imagining that her intended victim possessed the very expertise her company so desperately needed. The French delegation has concerns, Jean-Luc Moreau announced, his precise English carrying undertones that made venture capitalists sweat. Our partnership requires absolute confidence in leadership and decision-making. Today's events suggest systemic errors in evaluation that could impact our joint venture's success. Board member Robert Chen, who had remained silent during the technical demonstration, now spoke with the authority of someone holding significant equity. This incident will require an immediate investigation by our governance committee. We need to understand how a lead engineering talent was relegated to custodial duties while his expertise could have prevented 8 weeks of catastrophic failure. The investigation wouldn't take long. Isabella's email history provided a damning trail of discriminatory behavior. Messages referring to Marcus as the cart guy, despite his official associate title. Deliberate scheduling of his cleaning duties during important investor calls. Documented discussions about his impending layoff as a cost-cutting spectacle. HR manager David Chen, who had participated in the cruel email threads with laughing emojis, found himself summoned to emergency meetings about creating a hostile work environment. The viral video had become a legal exhibit, and corporate lawyers were already discussing settlement options. 2 weeks later, the consequences materialized with surgical precision. Isabella was demoted from Chief Executive Officer to a newly created role of Strategic Futures Advisor. Her salary was cut by 60%, while her decision-making authority was completely revoked. She retained her employment. The board wasn't interested in a wrongful termination suit, but her corporate power had been utterly neutralized. The mandatory diversity and inclusion training felt particularly ironic. Isabella, who had spent 5 years dismissing Marcus's potential, now sat through workshops on unconscious bias and inclusive leadership. Her trainer was Dr. Reed, who approached education with the same methodical precision she applied to propulsion systems. Meanwhile, Marcus's transformation continued beyond his individual success. His promotion to lead propulsion diagnostics engineer came with a 200% salary increase, significant stock options, and leadership of a new task force on inclusive innovation. The company implemented new policies requiring a formal review of all employee suggestions, regardless of their source or current role. Astra Launch's stock price rose 18% following the positive publicity. The viral video had become an unexpected marketing triumph, demonstrating the company's commitment to recognizing talent wherever it was found. Recruitment applications soared by 60%, with many candidates specifically mentioning the inspiring story of meritocracy in action. The most satisfying moment came 3 months later when Isabella approached Marcus privately in the employee cafeteria. Her designer pantsuit had been replaced with more modest business attire, her arrogant posture softened by hard lessons in humility and respect. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly, her words carrying genuine contrition, "and I'd like to ask for your guidance on how to build more inclusive leadership habits." Marcus looked at her with the same grace his grandfather had shown to pilots who had initially doubted his mechanical skills. "Everyone deserves a chance to learn, Isabella. The question is whether you're ready to listen with the same attention you'd give a machine that needs to be fixed. Corporate justice had been served. Proportional, educational, and ultimately redemptive. 6 months later, Marcus Jones stood in Astra Launch's expanded engineering facility, watching French technicians install equipment for the European satellite production line. His designs now powered communication satellites over Paris, Marseille, and Lyon, their thrusters humming with the harmonic perfection he discovered in a moment of corporate crisis. The framed State College degree still hung in his apartment, but now it shared wall space with patents, industry awards, and a photograph of him shaking hands with Jean-Luc Moreau at the Paris Air Show. His grandfather's hangar wisdom had evolved into multi-million-dollar engineering decisions that bridged oceans. Sometimes the most powerful expertise comes wrapped in the most unexpected packages. The question isn't who holds the degrees, it's who has the dedication to truly understand the problem. If this story inspired you to look beyond assumptions and recognize hidden talent, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Have you ever witnessed someone's potential being completely overlooked? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might become our next viral story of justice and recognition. There's a detail only sharp-eyed viewers will notice at minute 4:32 that reveals Isabella's true character. Watch again and tell us what you spotted.